The Championship is shaping up to be so competitive next season, but I'm interested in who the dark horses are going to be. You always get 2 or 3 sides emerging from nowhere per Championship season who always punch above expectations, and that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. So the other day on the community tab, I asked you guys the question, who do you think are going to be the dark horses in the league next season? In today's video, we're going to be going through some of those responses and trying to figure out who those sides could be next season. If you do go on to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like, but without any further ado, let's jump in. We had a few shouts in the comments for Portsmouth being the dark horse. Moose Cannon says, I think Portsmouth because they pulled off some big results last season against teams in the top 10 and pulled off quite good fights as well, so I think they could be my dark horse. Shadow Ninja shared that view as well. I have a strange feeling Portsmouth will be the dark horse and get 9th place next year, but consistently be near the playoff picture all year. And honestly, I think that's a valid shout, and there are some good reasons as to why Portsmouth could really kick on in the Championship next season. What I draw your attention to is this table here. This is the Championship table last season from January until the end of the season. You can see Portsmouth there sat in 7th place. 34 points they took from their last 24 league matches. Really tough side to beat last season at Fratton Park in particular, where they only lost 5 home matches all season. That was an absolutely brilliant home record that they boasted. I think it's a good, strong, and actually quite likeable group of players as well. Under an upcoming manager like John Mousinho, you had players who really thrived in that setup last season, none more so than Josh Murphy, who was one of the top chance creators in the league. Only 2 things have sort of held me back about Portsmouth in recent weeks. If you saw my early Championship predictions the other day, I had them fairly low down in mid-table again. The only 2 things that have held me back of my estimations of them. One was a fairly slow start to the transfer market compared to a lot of the other mid-table sides who have been really active so far, but it does seem like these next few weeks could be quite busy for them, obviously. Just got that deal over the line for John Swift. Hungarian midfielder Mark Kozanovski looks like he could be the latest player going in at Fratton Park as well, so there clearly is money to spend and they want to go after the right targets, which I think is encouraging. But the biggest problem for Pompey last season, coupled with a couple of injury spells, was just their away form, which they couldn't quite crack the formula to. Last season in the Championship, only Plymouth picked up fewer points than Portsmouth did in away matches. If they manage to strike that balance a bit better next season, there's no reason why they couldn't really kick up the league, because in terms of goal scoring, creating chances, yeah, they were one of my favourite teams to watch at points of last season. Jaden says Birmingham City, they beat a top tier La Liga club 3-1. He's referring to their pre-season friendly recently against Sevilla there, and their squad has been replaced and they look ready for Premier League promotion. To be honest, I think we're at a stage now with Birmingham where we can no longer classify them as dark horses. In the grand scheme of things, a newly promoted club from League One aiming for the top 6 in the Championship. Of course, we'd, under usual circumstances, call them a dark horse, but the money going into the Birmingham right now, they're definitely going to be one of the highest spenders of this transfer window in the Championship. Their wage budget probably ranks them amongst the top end Championship clubs, barring probably the parachute teams as well. I think we're going to get to a stage, especially by the end of this transfer window, where the vast majority of people are going to be having Birmingham, if not in their top 6, in and around that promotion picture. Noah says Stoke have signed some very decent players so far, so they're my dark horse this season. Likewise, Nath also has Stoke down as a dark horse. Great signing so far with Mark Robins, a top Championship manager, only going to get better as the window continues. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if there is a big sale at Stoke between now and the end of the window. There has been a bit of talk about Berger potentially having some interest, Badron Ho as well, someone who attracted interest earlier in the window, but they've been fairly active in the window so far. They brought in 4 players. Televerov coming in from Plymouth I think is a nice pickup. They got Aaron Cresswell on a free from West Ham. Divin Mbama's come on loan from Manchester City. This could be a big season for him or a bit of a learning curve. It's tough to say with players coming from youth football how they'll immediately acclimatised to the Championship. And then the wildcard signing that Stoke have made, in my opinion, is Sorba Thomas, one which could very easily go either way. I think he could be a roaring success at Stoke, or it just doesn't work out. We've seen both versions of Sorba Thomas over these last few years at Huddersfield, haven't we? I think that Stoke in the second half of last season under Mark Robins were solid, but not exactly spectacular. Probably the best way that I'd sum them up. Under Robins so far, Stoke have averaged 1.18 points per game, and if projected over an entire Championship season, that would be worth around about 54 points, which you are looking at low mid-table with that that sort of points tally. But with a full pre-season and a bit of a shuffle around of the squad, maybe the slate is wiped clean there for Stoke next season. What that club needs to do is just get out of this rut that they have been on in recent years of continually finishing lower each consecutive season, because if that continues for another year, there's not much lower that Stoke could get before they're really scrapped into this relegation dogfight. We also had a few shouts for Watford. The signings are positive and Pozzo seems to believe we should get promotion. Delusional, but might ignite a spark into some of the players. And yeah, Watford are a tough one to put your finger on next season, in my opinion, because the very end of last season, Watford were one of the clubs that initially I had a bit of a fear over coming into this season. You know, parachute payments have now run out. The dismissal of Cleverley all seemed a little bit strange at the time. The second half of the season, the form book was really bad for Watford. But since that point, it looks like Watford have almost come out the other side of that. And the rumblings we're getting from that club at the moment seems like they're willing to really push the boat out this season and try and go for it again. The only thing that could count against Watford next season, in my opinion, is it going to be too much change too quickly? A lot of new players coming into the Championship at once that are going to need to gel with one another, but also acclimatise to this division as well. Adding to the mix a new manager coming in as well. Sometimes when there's that level of change, you don't always get the cohesion that's needed to have a proper top six push. But on paper, yeah, Watford, some of their forward attacking players, if they get all their targets, they're looking quite exciting. Tony says Millwall will be there or thereabouts next season, providing that Ivanovic stays put. Also, with a couple more additions likely, I think this is the time for a serious push for the top six. And yeah, I could definitely see that with Millwall. They only just narrowly missed out last season. Give Alex Neil a full pre-season with that squad. I think they'd be looking in quite good shape to have another crack at it next season. But like the comment mentioned there, the future of Ivanovic is absolutely central to how Millwall do next season, in my opinion, because a lot of that attack, I think, will be based around him. Obviously, there has been a bit of interest recently from Italy. We've had Fabrizio Romano tweeting about his situation as well, which usually makes me think that there's a bit of agent talk going on there behind the scenes. Along with Ivanovic as well, I think it's really important that Millwall iron out the future with Tanganga. Obviously, someone who has also been attracting interest from Premier League clubs in recent weeks as well. If they lose those two players, you're left with quite a big void in your squad, aren't you? But keep hold of them and add a couple others on top. I know that Massimo Luongo has been training with them recently. That looks like a really competitive side. You don't fancy them to concede that many goals next season. If Ivanovic stays and Coburn manages to stay fit as well, you could have a decent chance at it. Talk Wednesday says Sheffield Wednesday could be a dark horse if we can get a new owner, meaning the embargo is lifted. If nothing changes, we'll be in the relegation battle. And yeah, for Sheffield Wednesday, I think it all comes down to those off-the-field issues. As of recording right now, with their current status, I think they will be an overwhelming favourite for probably not just the bottom three, but actually 24th in the table as well. However, there are a number of interested parties right now in buying the club, but these things do take time. Jack says Swansea, not being biased, our transfer business has been very good recently, and I believe we've got what it takes to compete for the top six area of the table. White Hart Dane backs that opinion. He says Swansea City, decent transfer window so far, and they were looking really good at the end of last season. 5th or 6th is probably their ceiling, but I do think they'll be there or thereabouts. I do agree with the end of that statement. I think that next season, what we could get, I wouldn't be surprised if we do have another cut-off of maybe 3, 4, at a push 5 teams making a big bridge between themselves and the rest of the chasing pack, and then maybe there are sort of 1 or 2 playoff spots left over that I think genuinely about 10 teams could be fighting for, and Swansea are definitely one of those. We've obviously still got a long time to go between now and the end of the window, but Swansea have really pushed the boat out with some of their incomings so far. Love the pickup of Cameron Burgess on a free transfer. Ethan Galbraith, I think, is a brilliant signing from Leyton Orient that they fended off a lot of competition for. And Zdeno Nusa is their big marquee signing, who could be a really exciting one in the Championship next season as well. Despite how well they did in the second half of last season under Alan Sheehan, I still can't shake that feeling that history usually tells us that people stepping up from that sort of number 2 job internally into the number 1 job never tend to do that well long term, but I'm willing to be proven wrong with him, and it really seems like they're putting their money where their mouth is this summer because they're really backing him in this transfer window. David thinks Derby could be a dark horse for next season. They're making big moves and quality ones at that, just missing a couple of quality wingers and a decent midfielder. If they sign Sam Morsey, that'll be another quality signing. Yeah, Morsey was linked with Derby a few days ago. That move will no longer be happening. He's now going to sign for a club in Kuwait. But speaking of the business that Derby have done so far, I think this has been a really encouraging window for them. I really do. Their main problem last season was scoring goals. They were one of the lowest scoring sides in the division, but I think they've already addressed that lack of firepower with the incomings of Andy Vyman, Carlton Morris, and most recently Patrick Agyman, who's their marquee signing of this summer. Danny Bart, I think, is a nice pickup on a free transfer as well. Like the comment said, they're still missing a few parts. Another midfielder would be nice, and a bit of pace going forward in those wide areas would be welcomed as well. I do think Derby are a club that does have a bit of ambition, though. It's why John Eustace took the gamble of leaving Blackburn when he did to sign for a club like Derby, who were in a relegation battle when he took them over, because of that project and potential to really kick on this season. Eustace, I think we all know, is a very good manager for this level as well. I think last season had Blackburn punching above his weight, was doing a good job with Birmingham, obviously, before he was dismissed there as well. He's going to have Derby defensively sound next season, and if they can add a few more goals to their squad, which it looks like they've done in this transfer market, I can see why a lot of people will be tipping them to be a bit of a dark horse next season as well. Paul Jones thinks Charlton will be the dark horses of next season. He says Luton Town struggled when Nathan Jones left for Southampton. He then came back to Luton and they were flying. Of course, he is now at Charlton, so I believe a top 8 finish. That is a very bold shout to have Charlton in the top 8 next season, but they're becoming harder to ignore, Charlton, aren't they? With the transfer business they've been doing, they've been much more active in the window than, let's say, a Wrexham have been. And I think we all expected Wrexham to be the sort of big spenders coming up from League One. When I did my early championship predictions, I had Charlton in the bottom 3. But it's becoming harder and harder to ignore them with the players they keep adding to that squad. Looks like Blackpool's Rob Apter could be the latest player coming in as well. Another player that I really like the look of in League One last season. With a manager like Nathan Jones, who I think plays quite well into that underdog tag as well. Charlton are going to be a tough team to beat next season, aren't they? My biggest question right now is who's going down in the Championship next season. I think at the bottom end of it, it's such a strong league. Definitively nailing 3 sides who are going to go down next season, I think is really tough because, like the comment says there's definitely a valid argument that Charlton could be a bit of a dark horse next season. I think most people have tipped them to be the weakest of the 3 coming up from League One. But as things stand right now, you could argue their squad's looking as strong, if not even a bit better, with the additions they've made than Wrexham's is right now. And as we saw last season in the Championship, there's a very good chance that, once again, all 3 of the newly promoted clubs could survive again. I did hear a few shouts for QPR being a dark horse next season as well. Stefan will be the next big thing. Quite a bit of change with QPR, obviously, with Marty Cifuentes going out. I know things ended on a bit of a sour note for him at QPR, but generally speaking, I think he did a really good job there, considering the situation that club was in when he took them over. They looked like almost certainties to go down under Gareth Ainsworth, and then he managed to guide them to safety and then a solid mid-table finish last season as well. The big signing that's got everyone talking about QPR right now is Kwame Poku coming in. They beat off a lot of competition to get that deal over the line. I think he's obviously a very exciting acquisition, but for me personally, the thing that I'm most impressed from a QPR perspective is actually the players they've been able to keep hold of so far. So first of all, getting Jimmy Dunn tied down to a new deal when there was interest from Sheffield United and a couple of other clubs, I think is really big for them. Also, turning down some pretty lucrative offers for Jonathan Varane as well, I think is a statement of intent that club wants to push forward next season. Listen, like I said a lot on this video so far, it's going to be a very competitive league next season, and QPR are definitely one of those clubs that could go either way, but if they can add well between now and the end of the window, I could see an argument. Frode says Norwich and West Brom, if those even count, I think they're both seen as fairly likely playoff teams. I think Oxford will get a top 12 finish. That would definitely make them a dark horse. To be fair to Oxford, a really strong performer in the second half of last season. They were averaging 1.26 points per game from January onwards, which over a full season would be worth 58 points. And last season, 58 points would have been good enough to get you 12th in the Championship. Oxford were one of the most proactive clubs in the window last summer because they needed to be. They needed to strengthen their squad in all departments coming up from the playoffs in League One. This summer's not quite been as active, and I think for good reason, because they're already working with a solid core of players that they just need to add some quality to at probably both ends of the pitch. They've slowly been doing that with a couple of additions so far. Only major flaw in that team right now is I think they still need to add a few more goals to it, but if they manage to do that between now and the end of the window, yeah, they could seriously kick on as well. But what's your guys' thoughts on next season in the Championship, and who do you have down as the realistic dark horses? Of the comments that I've seen so far, I think a lot of people are talking about Swansea, Derby, maybe Portsmouth as well, who I've seen a few shouts for, but I'd be interested to get some more verdicts on these in the comments down below. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to drop a like. We do regular content coming out on the channel here, especially between now and the start of this new Championship season. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.